on the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the place where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains.
Coming to you straight from San Diego, California. Let's welcome our host, April Mahoney.
So, Katherine, you were a personnel clerk. Tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, so interesting enough. So I came from a very large blended family, his, hers, and theirs. Very dysfunctional family. But my mom got married as soon as she graduated 8th grade, and married a man. Yeah, married my biological father. Was married for 9 years, but he was an alcoholic, and she was a total teetotaler. From a very religious family, no alcohol. And so for 9 years of her getting beat up and, children being abused, he one day took us out in the country and tried to shoot all three of us with a shotgun. And he actually pulled the triggers. So fortunately, my mom was able to jump out of the car with me, and my sister pulled my brother out, and they ran. And they were picked up by somebody else. And so that was the defining factor for her after 9 years of marriage. That's over. Then a couple years later, she marries a man who had custody of his 6 children. And then he just proceeded to be abusive, with all of the family. And so at 17, all the boys left home at 17 as soon as they could join the military. All the girls got married somewhere between 15, 16. I left at 17. But I decided the only reason my mom had to put up with what she put up is because she didn't have education. So I thought, man, I am going to school. I was one of 3 who graduated high school. I was the only one who graduated, with my bachelor's and master's. And I've been going forward ever since, saying no man will ever be able to control me because I make my own money and I can take care of myself and I can take care of my kids. So at 30, went back to college because I couldn't get promoted into management because you had to have a degree. And so I went back nights, and it took me 9 years, but I did it. And when I graduated from University of San Francisco, I bought a tassel for my son, my daughter, and me. And I said, we graduated. I'm walking the stage, but we graduated, because by then I was a divorced single mom and trying to go up the corporate ladder and get my education. So I really encourage people to figure out what it is. They're not a victim of their past. Your past, you had no control over. You were a kid. You can change it. And at 13, my sister took me to a Norman Vincent Peale conference in Stockton, California. And that man changed my life. Wow. Because he said, nobody can hurt you unless you allow them to hurt you. Nobody can treat you badly unless you allow them to treat you badly. And that just dovetailed with the abuse I was going through at home. And I made up my mind that day that I will do everything I can, and I will always have power because I will always be educated, and I will have that great job. Right. And so I traveled around the world in my corporate jobs. I mean, I've had the best career ever. I wouldn't change a thing about it. And no man has ever mistreated me. Nope. I wouldn't have allowed it, but I think I give off this aura. I think you teach people how to treat you, and I've given off this aura of you just treat her with respect.
I coin that phrase all the time. You have to teach people how to treat you.
You do.
And then if they mistreat you, how do you receive that? How do you process it? You got to praise.
You set very healthy boundaries, so what you're going to allow people to do and not do, but you go forward, and sometimes it's their issue. It's not yours. It's not about you at all. Right. They've got some stuff going on. And so just keep going forward, set your goals, figure out what your life is supposed to look like, what you want it to look like, and live your dreams, not somebody else's.
Absolutely.
Because somebody's
dream might be your nightmare.
Absolutely. And if I had lived to what my mom would have expected and my stepdad would have expected, I would have been a housewife somewhere, and I never would have done any of this stuff. And I probably would have been abused, and we would have been broke. Wow. Because that's what we knew, and that's what was acceptable.
Well, when you know better, you do better, and that's why you're on the edge.
Exactly.
That's an incredible story. That is an
Thank you.
Story. Okay, so tell me what's going on there in Texas. You were telling me a little bit about, how you work with men and women. Tell me a little bit about that.
I work with men and women both, because there was a long time in my career where I thought, if I could just help all the women be successful, this world would be such a great place. But then I started thinking, but if we leave the boys behind, we're really not accomplishing anything, because it's like we've read the book, but the boys haven't. So we can't go together and all be great and awesome. So in small businesses that I deal with now, um, most of the men realize that they're not real good at this whole HR thing.
Right.
You know,
We see women in HR roles for the most part.
you tend to, especially in the lower levels. Yeah, oftentimes at the high executive level, then it'll be a man.
Right.
You know, but typically they didn't come through the ranks.
Right.
You know, work their way up. They just got the education and then they were plugged in. You know, because they kind of had all the right connections.
Well,
But anyway, so
connections today, right?
Yes, we do.
On Edge, okay, Brains. We
Yes.
started chatting it up, okay.
Yes, love it.
This is Katherine Hartvickson. Hartvickson? Am I saying that correctly?
Hartvickson. Yes.
Hartvickson.
Yes.
Where is that from? That's not an American.
It's Norwegian.
Norwegian. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it had, all these different syllables in it. So thank you so much for being here on the edge with me and my brains. I'm excited. We have so much to talk about. Brains, we're going to talk about human resources. We're going to talk about it in a different, we're going to frame it a little different, because it is different. When folks go back to work, they're going to be crunchy. They're going to be acting strange. They don't know if the person sitting next to them has got the COVID. They don't know if they have underlying racist mentalities. They don't know if they're going to keep their job. What is the direction of the company? And the facilitator and the orchestrator of all of this is a human resources professional. And that is Katherine. Katherine is a former vice president. She is now running a great coaching program. And she also has a secret passion. We're going to talk about that too. I'm telling you, it's just as sweet as it can be. So Brains, help me welcome our guest today, Katherine Hartvickson, to On the Edge. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, April. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast.
I'm so excited to have you, because I want people to know what they are in for when they go back into the workplace. It's a whole different scene. Now, I haven't been in a corporate environment in a long time. However, there is still a lot of human resource functions that I have to complete myself, just working for myself, and people that I subcontract to do things for me. So tell us a little bit about your experience before we really kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on.
Okay, so I have spent a little over 30 years in HR, and I literally started right out of high school as a personnel clerk and worked my way up into management, and then always worked for large companies. And so when I left the corporate world in 2010, I was the VP of HR for Ingersoll Rand, which was Trane Heating and Air Conditioning. So I had the whole compressor division for China, Mexico, and the US. Absolutely loved what I've done. So I left the company then and decided to just help small business owners have control over their own destinies, because it's so common. Just, COVID, we're going through it again, but in normal times, sometimes the big guy swallows up the little guy, and then there's duplications of positions. Right. And now all of a sudden you're out of a job. And I've had to lay off so many wonderful people that didn't do anything wrong. They were great employees. It's just there were two of them, or the company was going a different direction. And so I really wanted to just give these people everything they needed, figure out who they are, what they want, go after it, and then make it to where if you go out of business, it's because you haven't done what you needed to do, or it was something without, you being able to control it. But it wasn't going to be somebody calling you into HR and saying, I'm sorry to let you know, but your job has been eliminated.
And I went through that more than I'd like to, acquisitions, and there was two of us. How do companies kind of figure out which one they get rid of?
Well, what you might not know is there's a whole legal thing behind all that, because and I've done it multiple times as well. So what happens is you will have the managers all submit their list. So like, here's all your people, here's all their positions, here's all their hire dates, their ages, and all that stuff. Then they will say, these are the people that I'm going to keep, and these are the ones I'm going to go.
Oh, you said something pivotal. Mm-hmm. They calculate the age. They look at how old they are. And your tenure, how long you've been with the company.
Absolutely. But we do this for a valid reason in HR, is because then when those managers say, okay, so here's the one I'm going to let this person go and I'm keeping this one. HR's role from a legal perspective is to look at this and make sure they're not making decisions based on age, sexual orientation, gender, any of those anything at all, other than pure qualification to qualification. And if it's a tie, then you're going to go with who's been here the longest. And so, a lot of times they've hired in somebody who's younger, they're working for less money. And so the manager's thinking, well, if I get rid of this older person, then I only have to let one person go, not two, because I've just got a budget number I have to meet. And it's like, no. So tell me about this person. They've only been here 3 years. And by the way, she's only 28. This one has been doing that same job, but they've been here for 15 years. And guess what? They're 50. It's like, no, not happening. And so
they want experience, but at the same time, I've seen so many people, and that's not your decision. I mean, I'm not saying that that's you.
Yeah, sure.
But they have made decisions where that person that is right there 2 years, 3 years before getting their pension. Boop.
Yeah, yes. And I have never had that experience, but like I said, I have had pushback where I just said, no, absolutely not happening. No, she's staying and she's going.
Wow.
End of story. But we're talking about doing like hundreds and thousands at a time. Wow. So HR's on the back end of that, collecting all the data and then meeting with managers to get their justification, because they'll write their justifications. But we have to make sure at the end of the day that the right person is leaving. It's like we like them all, right. But we've got to make sure we're doing it right.
Sometimes it's a good way to get rid of them. And I noticed that a lot of times, brains always worried, oh, wow, they're going to get me. But sometimes they start at the top, because those are high level positions.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of revenue. That's a lot of stock options. That could be a lot of liability. So there's a lot to go through. Let me ask you another question with regard to HR that people are concerned about. They don't understand what is unemployment. They think for some reason that, when you're paying your state taxes or they're taking out all these deductions from your paycheck, that includes unemployment. But unemployment is actually an insurance that is paid by the employer, correct? Okay.
So that's why I always tell people, do not feel bad if you need to go collect unemployment. That's what it's there for.
Right. And there's no shame with that. But
none at all.
So many people here, there's 10% of the American workforce now that is on unemployment benefits.
Absolutely.
And a company has the option of accepting to pay that or denying that. Is that correct?
No. So what happens is, let's just say that, I lay off an employee. That employee goes and files a claim with the unemployment office. I get a notice that says, Susie applied for unemployment, and she said the reason for not working there anymore is because you fired her for attendance. Then I, as the employer, have 10 days to respond back on a form that says, yes, this is true, and here's my documentation. These are all the days that this person missed in the last, year. This is how many times they've been warned or whatever. Then I submit that back to the unemployment office. The person, the evaluator there, is the one who takes both pieces of paper and makes a determination as to whether or not I had a valid reason for letting Susie go. If she thinks or he thinks I didn't, then they're going to grant Susie unemployment. Then I have an opportunity to appeal and say, okay, maybe I didn't tell you enough information. I'm sure I was right in doing this.
Right.
And, here's all the disciplinary dates, and here she signed all this agreement. Here's our policy. Here's that she signed knowing what the policy was. Then I have to send her a copy of my response to the same one I sent to the unemployment office. Then we get on a phone call with the unemployment person, and they let her talk and they let me talk. They'll validate, is that true? Is this true? Etc. And then we hang up, and then we get a determination. If we still don't agree with that it was done correctly, then we can appeal to a tribunal. And then at that point, they can either say, no, I'm not going I'm not even going to listen to it. It's
Okay.
everybody did their due diligence and the right decision was made. Or they may say, okay, let's do it. And again, she gets on the phone, we get on the phone with all the documentation, and we get to tell a different body of people. They'll listen to us, and then they make a final decision.
By that time, you'd be hopefully you done found a job.
Exactly. Well, sometimes they'll grant.
That's one scenario. But let's look at the people here that have been affected by COVID-19 that are getting unemployed. Okay, but
Yeah,
I'm so confused. So let me see if I phrase my question correctly. They are unemployed. They got the, the additional $600, whatever, that's supplemented by their state or their government. But in addition to that, they're not being called back to work. Now, I've heard out there, and brains play close attention to this, because some folks are saying, hey, that $600 or $300 extra is sweet. It was more than I was getting.
Yeah.
Companies call you back to go to work and you say, I don't want to go to work. So now the employer has a responsibility to tell the unemployment, hey, look, I called Susie back and Susie said, I'm not wanting to come back because I'm getting more money on unemployment. They terminate them all together and they get zilch.
Zero. Yes. The exception to that rule, because they would still turn them off, but is that employee then could say, look, I am 65 or older, I'm diabetic, I've had cancer, so I'm at high risk of contracting and really dying of COVID-19. That's a valid reason. And so from an employer perspective, I would say, look, if they gave you that as their reason for not coming back, I'd let it go a little longer and see if we get this COVID thing under control to where this person then can say, okay, I feel comfortable now. If you can isolate them some way, if you can let them work remotely, then let them work remotely. You don't want to get rid of a good employee, unless you just have to.
Right. And people, you have to understand too, in corporations, that the turnover costs the company a whole lot of money.
So expensive.
It's very expensive. So they don't want attrition. They want to retain good employees. Okay.
Exactly.
But you got to show up and you have to deliver.
Yep.
Now, employers are facing a whole new set of challenges now.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they figured out that they can flip the switch and have their employees work from home, there's a lot of liability that's involved in that. When you talk about taking confidential information off the premises, taking the computers off the premises, is that person really working the 8 hours that they say, or the 12 hours that they say that they are?
Right.
There's a lot of software that is in place now, brains, that can track every nanosecond.
Oh, every stroke. Yeah, every keystroke.
From confirming how many calls you've taken to GPS. So don't think that because you're laying there in your bed eating bonbons that you're getting away with it. There is probably more observation that's being done while you're working remotely than you were at the office. At least you could get up and go mess around and go
talk. Yeah, go talk to your coworkers or whatever.
But now they are watching it and they're making sure that they pay you. I want to ask you, because of all of that, how does an employee now show up when it comes to evaluation time?
Well, let me go back and say something though first about your other comment, because most large companies, because that technology is not cheap. So these small mom and pop companies, or these companies that have got 5 people, 25, even 50 people, I guarantee you, they have not gone out and bought the technology to manage your keystrokes. So for them, they're going to manage on deliverables. This is what you're supposed to do. The invoices still have to be processed. The accounts receivable still have to be followed up on and entered into the computer. So it's either done or it's not done. So they're gonna look at productivity in that way. And if they think that you're slacking off, then as a manager, you're going to have a weekly check-in with that employee. To just say, okay, well, what are you working on? Here's what I want you to be working on next, and then setting some hard due dates to keep them going, because you just don't have the money, and especially right now when business is slow, you don't have the money for technology. To do that. Yeah.
Okay. So they don't. Okay. So now you've got the employee.
that is wanting a raise, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they are going in to meet with their HR person virtually.
Yes.
And I always did this. And when I went in, just like when I go in for an interview, right, this is a negotiation, okay?
It is. Yeah.
When you go in for an interview with a company, it's an exchange of information. Have your questions ready. You know, ask them, so what is so great about working at this company? And what are the growth opportunities? You know, what are some of the challenges maybe that the person that was in this position before me faced?
Right.
You want to be able to have that dialogue so that you can make an informed decision. Just because they say they're hiring, this may not be the best place for you. Okay.
I've always said it's like a marriage. You want that to be a back and forth, because
Absolutely.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Either of you can get divorced. So you don't want to waste your time getting a job that at the end of the day, it's just not the right culture for you. It's not the right fit.
Right. Okay. And so now when you go in for your evaluation, people just walk in there just willy-nilly. Oh no.
Not prepared.
Look at my accomplishments, what I have done, you know, my numbers, if I'm based upon productivity. I look at that, my attendance, any awards that I've received, any accolades that I've gotten from outside influences, customers, other employees, you know, other classes that I've taken, because your manager is busy. They've got maybe 5, 10, 15, if not 20 people, and they can't tick every box for you. So you have a responsibility to have that ready so that you can have an upper hand, you know, or have a hand in the decision, because you got to justify getting a raise. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And I will tell you, are you getting feedback right now in my microphone?
No, we're good.
Okay. You would be my ideal, because I will guarantee you that 99.9% of the people do not do that. Mm-hmm. So for the employee to keep notes throughout the whole year, and you're right, every little email that came through that said, wow, that was fantastic, thank you so much for doing that, or whatever. Just build yourself a little file, and then when it gets close to being that time of year when it's evaluation time, because you know the raise discussion is going to happen, you know, as part of that, have it all out and write it all down and say, here's all the things I've done. Just like you said, just bucket all the things I've done. Because you're right, your manager should not care more about your career than you do. I mean, this is your life, your career, your bank account, you know, your family you're supporting. So even in order to get a raise, it's not good enough to just say, well, I've been here for another year. And, you know, I bought a new car, and, you know, my kid's going into cheerleading, so it's going to cost a lot of money for uniforms. That's not your employer's problem. That's yours. Those are your decisions. So tell them, based on what you've done, you think you deserve a raise.
Right.
You know, and then have that discussion and have a number in mind. Go out on salary.com. Find out what are the comps in your areas for similar jobs. You know, and so that you know, if you're making whatever, if you're making 50,000, but the going rate, the average in San Diego, you know, is 59, well, you know, you got some wiggle room there.
Right.
And go in with facts.
And that's what I do too when you go in for the position. The last thing you talk about, Brains, is the money. You want to make sure that when you go on for the interview, that you're having a conversation one-on-one to make sure that it's a good fit for you, as well as a good fit for the employer. Then when you start talking about the cheese, you've went in, you've done your homework, you've seen what the going rate is, you know what your qualifications and skill set is. Because again, I say with all due respect to you HR people, their job is to kind of lowball you. It's not to bring you in at the top. So
you never want to bring anybody at the top. But let me tell you why that is. So there's a salary band that will say everybody, these jobs are all in this band. So maybe it's a grade level 10. And so in 10 may pay between this amount and that amount, with the midpoint being somewhere in here. So based on their experience, you know, coming to you with that experience, or if it's an internal promotion, then you're going to get them right there, midpoint, maybe just a little bit over. Could be a little bit under, depends on, again, what you're trying to accomplish here. But the reason that you keep them in there is you don't want to overpay for the position, but you don't want to underpay, because if you underpay, they're just going to go find another job that pays what you could have paid. And now you've lost a really good employee. But it's like getting the guy to mow your yard. You could probably pay somebody $100 if you wanted to,
Right.
but if you could get it done for 12, wouldn't you rather pay 12?
You would, but also you want to have some room to grow.
Exactly.
You want to be able to give that
give them
promotion.
raises. Yeah.
Be able to give those raises and all that.
Exactly.
And Brains, and another thing that I want you to consider when you're looking at salary, don't just look at the dollar amount. Is there benefits? Is there stock options? Is there additional vacation time to negotiate for?
Yeah.
All of these things. How far is it from your house? You know, do they have daycare for your kids? All these things are benefits, and that's a part of your packet. Am I right?
Yes, even flexibility. You know, will they allow you to work at home sometimes? Will they, how much PTO do they have in addition to vacation? How much of the insurance premium for your health care do they pick up? That's a huge expense.
Huge.
So if they can pick up, 50 to 75% of it, that's amazing. I have some clients who pay 100%, which is almost unheard of,
wow.
In this day and age, for employee only, and then the employee will pick up for family or a portion of family. So look at all those things, like what is important to you when you go find that job. And right now, because of COVID, is the perfect time to figure out who you are, what excites you. So I mean, there's certain types of work that I can do, I know how to do, but I don't like doing them at all. And I can feel the energy difference. So when I'm coaching, for instance, and I'm working on, leading, teams, my energy level is really high and I could do it all day long. But then you ask me to put together that procedure manual. It's like, yeah, I know how to do it, but golly Moses, every single word is just like painful. Find where your sweet spot is, and then go find work that you could live in your sweet spot most of the time, because you'll be a whole lot less stressed. You'll be very good at it because it's easy for you, and the employer will be thrilled. You'll be their rock star.
And another thing that I want you to consider is that everybody is impressed with this big $25 word, entrepreneur. Yeah. You can end up being entrepreneur. Okay? There is nothing wrong with going to a job, doing a great job, getting all the information that you can, again, because you're going to learn while you're there. You're going to build relationships. You're going to build contacts. You're going to be able to participate in courses, off-site or on-site, whatever. So there's always going to be some development there. But you'll be able to take that with you to your next employer or to your next position, either one. Those are also benefits. And it's okay to have a job, okay?
Absolutely.
You get a paycheck. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but let me tell you, being an entrepreneur is no joke. You got to find the business. You got to build the business. You got to work the business. You got to get paid for the business. And then you got to start that process all over again. Build relationships, emotional intelligence, good customer service. And you're doing this all by yourself.
Right. I remember when I first started out, so 10 years ago, I was so used to HR, like people came to me, to ask me questions to help, build their careers and developmental opportunities and things like that. I guess I just naively thought, well, they'll just all come. And so I got the office. I got all the setup, bought the printers and all that other kind of good stuff, and crickets. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Where are all these small business owners that really want to learn how to lead people and have great companies and make sure they don't get sued and, don't violate laws and things like that? And that's when I learned, gosh, I'm going to have to work at it, because I was like the department they came to before. Well, nobody is seeing the need for me right now. So I had to go out and create the need.
Right. And you have to have visibility. Again, it's marketing, it's promotion, because people need to know that you exist. So I want to talk a little bit about your course. You were gracious enough, hold on, let me grab it, to send me the Small Business HR Crash Course.
Yes.
This is a course and a program that you have developed that is absolutely stellar. Brains, let me tell you, this is from soup to nuts, everything that you need to know. And she is a great facilitator and coach. Tell us a little bit about this, Katherine.
So the whole program is designed for that small business owner who isn't big enough to have a true HR educated professional. They're just not big enough they don't need it full time, but they do need that knowledge. So they generally have somebody who's in charge of the HR that is the bookkeeper, the office manager, and event planner, etc. And they keep the files. That's not HR. Keeping the personnel files is not HR. It's a task inside of HR. So I knew that there's so many things that small business owner needed to know to not lose their business, to not get sued, not get a Department of Labor audit and get fined, for years and years of paying people incorrectly, calling everybody salaried and not paying them overtime, etc., not tracking hours. So I wrote this book specifically for them so that if nothing else, they could read the book, the owner could read the book, the person in charge could read the book, so they at least knew the basics. And then I've got this course designed. It's a 5-module course then that will take them through, here's what each of these components are, which laws apply to you, which don't, depend on your size. This is what discrimination looks like, etc. Here's some best practices, but also here's the legal landmines and how to make sure you don't step on them. Because you can go to jail. People don't realize that when HR makes a mistake, they can go to prison. This is like no joke. This is a big responsibility. And their boss can go to prison. And if that boss is the owner, well, there goes your business and all those people are out of work.
Exactly.
So I want to make sure that they're safe and they have what they need.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first one, discrimination. Good Lord, have mercy. It is walking a tightrope, okay?
Yes, it is.
It used to be where my boss would say, "Oh, April, that's a pretty dress and you smell good." I had no problem with it.
Yep.
Or give me a hug. I had no problem with it. But with the Me Too movement, it's very tenuous. With the gay rights movement, it's very tenuous. With Black Lives Matter, it's a landmine.
It is, yeah.
People, what I really hope is that you don't use this and these rights that we have and the laws that we have to weaponize and demonize your employer. If you are not happy there, go find you something else.
Yeah.
But don't play the race card. Don't play the sexist card. Don't play the victim card because you think you're going to get a payday. Because you got to go through depositions. You got to have
years.
Yes, years of litigation. And believe me, attorneys do not do it pro bono, baby. You better have the money to back it up. And you're going against a corporation that has a team of lawyers. So really, when you are faced with a situation, work with your HR people, document your process, document what you have, try to work through it really before you think that you've got this quick win of this lawsuit. Am I right, Katherine?
Absolutely. And if it's frivolous kind of lawsuits, it's like, somebody told me that I looked beautiful in this color of blue, but I think they were really looking at my chest. It's like, come on. That's frivolous. And then when you file frivolous things, what happens is that there's a numbness that kind of takes over. And so the next time when there really is something legit and you come to make that complaint, or somebody else comes and makes a really legitimate complaint, it's easy to discount it. It's like, oh, it's probably just another one of those. When no, this time it really is the real deal and it's got to be addressed. And companies do not take this stuff lightly. They will go do the right thing. And if they don't, then obviously you've got avenues, but you've at least tried everything in your power. Because at the end of the day, you want to have a good workplace. The employer needs a good workplace. It's all about productivity. You're all in this together, and all that money that they spend on lawsuits is money that doesn't go to raises for other people or benefits and all that other stuff.
Exactly. And it makes us look bad, brains. Women, blacks, gays, it makes us look foolish. That is not what we fought for. We fought to be treated equally and with respect and dignity. So you have to reciprocate, okay? So
yes.
Get off my soapbox. But I want to ask another question when it comes to recruiting. What does the world of recruiting look like? Resume, you're sending it online. You got a recruiter that is, the machine now that artificial intelligence is scanning for keywords.
Looking at keywords, absolutely.
What does that look like, and how do people stand out?
So it stands out by no longer do you put like the kind of the objective at the top of a resume. It's like, well, I want to really contribute in a big way, blah, blah, blah. I want a place that has good benefits where I can grow my career. Nobody cares about that anymore. Because it's really not about you. It's really about the company has a need,
Right.
and they're trying to find someone to fill it.
Contributor to the organization. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so they're looking for the facts. So if you've grown sales by X%, that's important. If you've saved money, if whatever, again, awards that you've received, big projects that you've run, that you've led or been a part of, is important. So, but it has to be all based on what have you specifically done. And of course, what education you've had and things like that. Because the recruiting process hasn't changed all that much, other than we obviously have artificial intelligence to help us through thousands of resumes and bring that down to something that makes sense. But then, the HR person is going to have a conversation with you. At first to find out, let's talk about this track record and what was important and why did you leave that last employer? And, if we talk to this last employer, what would they say you do best? What would they say your biggest opportunities are for improvement? So they're going to go through that. They're also going to do assessments because, again, we're looking for the fit into the culture. And so if you had kind of a toxic culture and you're really trying to eliminate that, the last thing you want to do is bring in another toxic person. So they'll do assessments to find out how emotionally intelligent, is this person?
No,
and what is their capability?
Fool, they gonna come in there and go Rambo in there. That's definitely what you don't want.
Exactly. Yeah, all the workplace violence and things like that. So there's assessment tools that I use as well that help me figure out who is this person, and are they going to be high maintenance, or are they going to be those independent starters that you could basically just say, go over there and solve it, and they will figure it all out and come back with ideas better than you ever dreamed of.
Well, that's different from millennials because it's a different process of how they go through it. And so we can't discriminate against them. This is how they were brought up. This is the thing. Let me ask another quick question though.
Okay.
How does a person that has a criminal record, okay, because 1 in 3 has been in jail, how do they talk through that intelligently so that you really give them an opportunity? Because there's a lot of people in jail, and there's a lot of people getting out of jail that want to work.
Sure, and that will contribute in good ways into society. They'll become contributing members of society. In some states, they have the law against checking the box, so employers can't even ask, have you ever been, or have you been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years? Most states you can still ask. I've always been on the philosophy is like, look, so say they check the box and say, yes, convicted of a felony. And then I'm going to ask them what it was. And I really just want to see that they've learned from it. Sometimes maybe they had a felony, driving intoxicated, and they happened to kill somebody in a car wreck, and they've served their time and they haven't had any more problems since then. It's like, okay, they learned their lesson. They're not a bad person. They did something that wasn't good, but that doesn't mean that they're a horrible human being, and so you still give them the opportunity to work. When I was working at Blue Diamond, there was a supervisor there that had just got out after 25 years of murder. He turned out to be one of the best supervisors we had. He was great with people. He learned tons of things when he was in prison, and he had committed in prison that he was going to get out and make something good of himself. So you just can't do it as a blanket. So I think those people need to be prepared to say, this is what I did. Because trust me, when we do background checks, we're going to get the details anyway. Right. So just be honest.
Don't say
don't lie.
Convicted because
just be honest and say, this is what happened. You don't have to give all the gory details, but basically I was involved in this. It was drugs. It was whatever.
Say, I was caught up in a situation or whatever. But don't think that if you was trafficking drugs across state lines, that you'll get a job in shipping and receiving. Don't think if you've embezzled, $1 million from your last company, that they're going to let you sit on the board of directors for the 5 years. Okay, so put it in perspective, brains. But
be realistic.
That there is redemption, and that there's programs that can help you create your resume, have this conversation, and be honest. But again, you have to be honest because you're redeeming yourself.
Right, but rehearse what you're going to say during that interview, because they're going to ask some tough questions. So what did you learn in those 10 years or 5 years you were in prison? What lessons came out of that? And then what is your commitment? lot of people will give you a chance. And now you might have to start at the bottom level. You might be driving a forklift, or working on an operating line. No big deal. You're still going to make, a good wage and have some good benefits and stuff. And then as you show what a good employee you are, you volunteer for teams, and, you make suggestions, and you work safely, and you're good, you're a good coworker and things like that. They're going to say, hey, and after all that, they're not even looking at a record at that point. They're
Right.
looking at your history with them.
Right.
All that past stuff will fall away. But so you may have to serve a little more time, while you're getting paid for it and having the freedom, just to earn their trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to ask you now. I'm just using this company as an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of hoopla in the media now about Uber and Lyft,
Yeah.
and about independent contractors.
Right.
They are working. They're using their vehicles. There is overtime. There is liability. They've got to do insurance, all this, but now they don't want to pay them as regular employees. Is there a fine line between there, or is that pretty cut and dry?
The law is pretty unforgiving. I mean, the laws, there's a little checklist you go through. And if you control what they do, if you can, even if you don't, but you can control what they do, like you can force them to work certain hours, be available during certain times of the day or the weekends or whatever. And, it doesn't matter that they're paying for their own gas. And I think their insurance is paid for by the company anyway, I believe, because your personal insurance on your car will not cover you if you're for hire. That's a whole different insurance thing. And so, in that case, they've got to have time records, which may be when they turn their machine on and turn it off for their availability. But that's one of the biggest mistakes that, like the roofing companies, for instance, they will hire everybody as, nope, they're subs, they're independent contractors. But they come in every single day, they wear the uniform, they wear the hat, they have the little placard on the side of the truck, might be their own truck, but they put the company's placard on it. They come to meetings just like everybody else, with coworkers that are truly employees, yet they don't pay their taxes. And workers' comp will say, no, those are employees. They're like, no, they're 1099s.
Well, I tell you, I don't let anybody do anything at my house, do roof painting, anything. I make sure. Do you have workers' compensation insurance for your employees? Because if not, I'm liable for that.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can require to see their policy.
Absolutely.
And now, I know here in Texas, the roofing companies are not allowed to do commercial work. So they could go to a homeowner and put a roof on. But if that person falls off the roof and breaks his back, they're not covered under workers' comp. Well, what else choice do they have? They're going to sue you.
Right.
Because they can't afford to take care of themselves and all their medical bills. I mean, that's just crazy. But workers' comp on some of those jobs is really, really, really expensive. I mean, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Into your sweet passion. Workers' compensation. That's another thing. Brains, it used to be back in the day that people could go out on a stress claim. You don't go on stress claims anymore because they look at what else is contributing to your stress besides the 8 hours that you are here. Do you have a person that you're taking care of? Do you have a drug or alcohol problem? Is there violence in your home? You're going to go through a deposition. So if you just think that those days was, I'll sue the company for workers' comp. If you have carpal tunnel and you have a surgery, absolutely. But the settlement is not to bring you up on top, it's to get you back to where you were prior to.
Right. Yeah, true, or as good as you can possibly get, because sometimes there's an injury that you're only going to go so far. You may have limited use of the wrist, for instance. But I will tell you too, and I actually testified in the California Supreme Court on workers' comp reform when I was working for Campbell Soup. And it was because we had people that would go out on a workers' comp claim, and their doctor would rate them as a permanent disability rating of like 75%. So they're getting a lot of money, every week through our workers' comp. But then, because they were still employed by us, they were coming back doing the same exact job that they did before their accident. And so we're paying them here and we're paying them over there. And these guys are like getting, like, this is like a huge windfall. And so what we did is we went to testify because the government needed to understand what was happening. It's like, look, if you're paying them 75% disability and they're home and they can't work, oh, I get it. Pay them all day long. They deserve it. They got injured on the job. But not if they can still come back to work and perform the same job without restrictions, like no medical restrictions. That's a loophole in the system that needed
or
to be
they
closed.
can go out in their front yard and pour a slab of cement. Don't think that they don't have investigators that roll back to the house too, okay?
It's called Sabrosa.
For my brains, because I got all genres, okay? And people think that they are quick and slick. It's not happening. It's not happening. You will, as Katherine said, go to jail.
You will go to jail. Yeah. It's called Sabrosa, which means under the roses, kind of like you're hiding under the roses to take pictures. And yeah, if you think somebody is faking a claim, and it's going to cost you a lot of money, because it doesn't just cost you to pay that person, your insurance rates go up as well.
Right.
Your workers' comp rates. And so it's a huge ticket item. When I worked for Blue Diamond, I was their HR director for 10 years there in Sacramento, California. Our rates, not our rates, but our costs was like $673 million a year.
Yikes.
In workers' comp. That's a whole lot of money that has to get passed in through the packaging of almonds in order to get some of that money back. I mean, it all flows down to the end user at the end of the day. So they put in behavior-based safety and it dropped it down to like 200 million. So it was a huge, huge change when people started looking at it and saying, what? He stuck his thumb in his eye and he claimed that as workers' comp? That's ridiculous. But we had co-workers then. It was actually the hourly employees who were responsible for getting those costs down when they started realizing how.
Yeah, we used to have incentives all the time that if there was no workers' comp, we have a big party or your stock options and all that. But what I want to talk about, since you were talking about nuts, I want to talk about this. Brains, look at this, okay? This is my guilty pleasure. Absolutely. This is Katherine and her daughter's secret passion. They created Twisted Toffee. Now you will see that I have done a lot of promos. I have crunched it up and put it on the rim of chocolate martini glasses. I've sprinkled it over the top of a salad to have a nice little crunch. I've put it on top of cheesecake, and I've just eaten it just right out of the bag. Tell us a little bit about how you and your daughter came up with Twisted Toffee and the purpose behind it.
Okay. So yes, that's my daughter Heather and I, and she's just like my sidekick there and is involved in all phases of it. And when we first started, I started it by myself originally and came up with this recipe and just had an idea to put liquor in it. I thought, gosh, I wonder what it would taste like if I put some rum in there, just to give it that extra little twist. And so I started doing it and people just loved it. And they would say, gosh, can I pay you to make some of this for me? And so that just became the business idea. And it's grown, and every year we've gotten better packaging. You can kind of see through there.
Oh my God.
It's just
there, that just put me under. I was
with the white chocolate.
Yeah. And you know what? My mother has diabetes. I had to kind of count it. She says, oh, can I have a little piece? And can I have a little bit more? It is delicious.
It is addictive. Yeah. So, but every year, every time I start thinking my business on the HR side and coaching side is grown, and I'm thinking, Christmas gets to be so busy because sometimes I'm making like 300 pounds, for a company, to give to all their key clients or something. And I think, oh my gosh, my house just literally just turns into all the packaging and all that other stuff. But then I thought, the grandkids get involved, and I'll tell Heather that, maybe we won't do it this year. And she's like, Mom, that's kind of our thing. And it is. It's just something that we both enjoy doing. And so we stir all the pots like that, just each one is done. And then, but when we're pouring that on, my husband gets involved because those pots are cast iron and they're really heavy. And so he pours them into the trays for us. And then, of course, he washes the dishes, which is amazing. And does butter runs and mail runs and things like that. But then when I'm melting the chocolate over the top and I put Blue Diamond almonds, I only use Blue Diamond diced roasted almonds on it. And
Blue Diamond almonds.
I am loyal. Yeah, I am a loyal person. But when I'm spreading that on there, I don't know, there's just something so peaceful, and it just makes me happy. I love it. And then when I get the feedback from people saying how addictive it is, they says, God, this is as addictive as crack. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never tried crack. I'll take your word for it.
And you don't want to.
No, I don't. But I mean, I love that.
But what you've done also is you really support your police department with that. And
We support our police. Yep,
great
we
photos
do.
that you just. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we kind of got the idea because my grandson, who just turned 6, would always go up to a police officer in any parking lot and say, thank you for your service. And it was just always so sweet. And we thought, with all the stuff politically going on, about defund police and all that other kind of stuff, I thought we need some way that we can show support for them. And, we have a candy company. So everybody likes sweets, and I'm sure they probably don't get a whole lot. So I called the local police department to start with and said, could I? And they're like, yeah, that would be awesome. So went down, and the chief showed us all the way through everywhere, showed us the little rooms where they hold people and, interview and do all that other kind of stuff.
You're going to have to end up hiring.
I know. Yeah. But they were so grateful. So then we just keep expanding it and just saying, okay, so where's the next community that we could donate to, and just to let them know that not everybody is asking to defund the police. Right. We count on them.
And you know what? Again, without law and order, there's chaos.
There's chaos. Yeah, so you have to have law and order.
Defunding the police, but I am into keeping a watchful eye on them.
Sure.
Accountable, and that's
Yep. But you don't throw out, the whole entire police department because you've got a few bad soldiers.
And again,
in every company you have.
When you call the police, you're not necessarily calling them over for twisted toffee.
Exactly.
To bring the peace because there's been some challenges.
There's been a problem, yeah.
Katherine, you have just answered all of the questions that I think people want to know. You are brilliant. I'm so glad that we've connected.
Me too.
Stay in touch forever. Please tell my brains how to get in contact with you for more information, to take your course, and to really work with you, and to get some twisted toffee.
There you go. Awesome. So my website is just www.quantumascendance.com. And I named it Quantum Ascendance because I get you farther faster than traditional ways, because in addition to HR, a piece of that is that mental mindset change that we work on. So you can get a hold of me there. Twisted Toffee, go to my Facebook page. Well, or actually you can go to the website as well. So it's just www.twistedtoffee.com. We're getting ready to make Twisted Toffee with scotch too. So yeah, because we thought, scotch and butter. And again, that was Heather's idea. Scotch and butter is butterscotch. And it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. So this weekend we're going to try a little batch. If it turns out good, I'll send you some.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
I need you to understand that this is just really a brief overview. This information can be applied to employers and employees, also entrepreneurs, because Katherine has done all three. She owns her own business. Mm-hmm. She's managed other people's business, and she's trying to help new people navigate through their business because she is the business. Thank you for being here on the edge with me and my brains. Brains, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button.
Yes.
That's right. Hit it and tell all your friends. Go back and watch the rewind of these shows. I'm going to play Katherine's over again. Share it with people because this is information they're going to need to know. Eventually, we're all going to be able to go back into the workplace, but we want it to be a pleasant place. Okay?
Absolutely.
Again, thank you so much, Katherine. I adore you.
Thank you. Yep, I love you. Mm-hmm. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.